Hello, hello. Welcome to the special Q&A portion of the Tuning Into Your Hunger episode. Thank you to everyone who left their questions on my Instagram post. If you're not following me on Instagram, you might want to so that you can have some interactive moments like that one. But I really appreciate you guys leaving some questions, and I definitely want to talk more about this whole tuning into your hunger business because it can be so frickin' confusing for so many people. And for good reason. All right, so the questions that we're going to be going over today are kind of amalgamation questions because we did get so many comments on that Instagram post. So I'm going to kind of look for the common themes within those and answer those themes. So the first one is, what is full? I don't understand what full is. I know that I, Lily, say eat until you are pleasantly full, but people don't know what that is. And this not really understanding what fullness is does come from the pretty intense disconnection that we have from our bodies. And so in order to understand what fullness is for you, you are going to have to go through the process of working on reconnecting to your body and your personal hunger cues. See the other video. Within the health and wellness world, I know that there are a lot of different recommendations too. A really popular one is to eat until you're 80% full. Now, I'm pretty adept at tuning into my own body, but I don't know what the frick 80% full is. But I think that when I try to eat until I'm 80% full, I end up just feeling kind of like hungry and unsatisfied for the rest of the night. So that doesn't work for me. I've tried forcing myself to do it for a week or two at a time, but it just ends up feeling like restriction, and inevitably I end up losing control and binging and eating a ton of food. And so I don't think the whole 80% full thing is gonna work for me. I don't think it's going to work for a lot of people. Like I said, I like to eat until I'm pleasantly full, which means that my stomach is full. It's pretty much at capacity. However, I'm still able to breathe. I'm not stuck back on the couch groaning. That would be uncomfortably full. When I am pleasantly full, usually within 2 hours, which is generally the space between when I finish eating and when I get into bed. Not necessarily when I go to sleep, but when I get into bed. I'm gonna get to a point where I'm really comfortable. I don't feel like my stomach is actively digesting food anymore, and so I know that I'm gonna sleep well. If I overeat, if I eat too much, I end up waking up several times throughout the night and I'm kind of like burping and I can feel gurgling and my stomach just still feels full and uncomfortable, and I don't really like that sensation. I feel like it decreases the quality of my sleep. It's not a good look for me. And that will lead us into our second amalgamated question, which is about stomach size. And I apologize for my neighbor's dog. It won't shut up, so I'm just gonna keep going. So differences in stomach size can certainly be genetic. I know that genetically speaking, like my dad can put down a lot of food, and so can I. People are really shocked at the amount that we're able to eat. I know that other people, like my mom, she has a small stomach. She's not able to eat much in a single sitting. Certainly too, histories of eating disorders, whether a lot of restriction or a lot of binging, can lead to differences not necessarily in the physical size of our stomach, but in its willingness and ability to stretch out. And so there can be quite significant differences in the amount of food that we are able to eat in a single sitting. I know a lot of you guys look at the meals that I eat and you're like, oh my God, no, not for me. But eating those bigger meals 2 to 3 times a day works really well for me. And I've also come to understand that the size of my meal is very much dependent on the quality of food that I'm eating. So if I'm eating food like fruits or veggies that are pretty calorie light and yet very voluminous, I'm going to end up eating a huge volume of food. If I'm eating a meal of more calorie dense foods like starches, proteins, and fats, I'm going to eat a smaller amount of food. Otherwise, I'm going to make myself really uncomfortable and kind of ill. You guys have probably noticed that a lot of times my meals are so big because they contain a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables. For people with, smaller stomachs, it might be important for their caloric and nutrient intake to eat smaller meals more often throughout the day. I know that there are a lot of trends right now about limiting the amount and the time of day that you eat. I don't think that that's smart. We all need to be really clear with ourselves about what works for us and what allows us to get the amount of nutrition that we need to survive and thrive. So please, please, please do not allow external sources to dictate how much or when or what you eat. Practices like intermittent fasting might work for people like me who have huge stomachs and great digestion and are able to eat big meals less often, but they're not going to work for people who are only able to eat small amounts of foods at a time. You have to be aware of what's going on for you, and you have to be responsible for your nutrient intake. We have to fulfill our needs. There's no way around it. So play with it and figure out what kind of pattern of eating is going to work for you. That said, there is a contingent of people who have dealt with eating disorders, and those residual patterns from eating disorders can be incredibly insidious. I know that I see a lot of comments left on my posts and on my videos that say things like, Lily, I just can't eat more than 1,000 or 1,500 calories a day. I feel sick. I'm really struggling. I don't know what to do. I understand that there can be some physical limitations, and there can certainly be physical backlash as far as digestive capacity and digestive power after we've gone through an eating disorder. But I also have to say, you need to be very honest with yourself and have a very deep check-in with yourself about why you are not wanting to eat food. Is it really a physical limitation, or is this residual eating disorder thinking? Because eating disorders don't give up. I haven't really participated in my eating disorder in at least 7 or 8 years, but I will be damned if at least once a day I don't have a thought that's like, oh, Lily, maybe we could just not eat today and you would be skinnier. Or, oh, maybe you can just take a smaller serving and tomorrow you'll be skinnier. And so eating disorder thinking, it's insidious and it's sneaky, but it's also not that sneaky because it tends to finish every single sentence with, and then you can be skinnier. So you have to check in with yourself and be really freaking honest about what is motivating your food intake. On the Instagram posts, there were also a lot of questions about overeating. I had one person comment and they referred to their overeating as greediness. Like they just want to eat it because it tastes good and because they are greedy. And I found that choice of words, it bothered me a little bit because it does have such a negative connotation around it, like greediness and gluttony, like they're really bad things. I just want to be really clear that we're human beings. We are life forms on planet Earth, and essentially every single life form is programmed to consume as much delicious sustenance as possible. And so is it greediness, or are we just naturally being alive? It's totally natural, totally normal to want to eat a lot of yummy food. Now, one of the primary comments about this said, there's nothing emotional going on. I'm not eating to suppress anything. I'm not eating for any other reason other than it tastes good. What should I do? If that is the case, then you're literally going to just have to implement some self-control and be mindful as you eat, take some pauses, really check in with yourself. Am I full? Am I going to be too full? Do I really want to inflict this upon myself? Do I want to deal with the consequences of over fullness? All I have to do is think about rolling around in bed all night burping and I can stop eating. That said, I have never had any trouble controlling my overeating when there's nothing emotional going on. Personally, I've noticed that I have this track in my mind And I think it's left over from the years and years when I was restricting myself and I just wouldn't let myself eat certain foods. And so if I gave into my cravings and I started binging and I started eating food, I would kept thinking I won't be able to eat this again. So I need to eat as much as I can now. And so when I get to a point where I'm eating something that's really tasty and I'm kind of shoveling it in, and I take a pause during my meal and I say, Lily, what's going on? Oftentimes, something will be going through my mind, really subconsciously. Well, you better eat this now because you're not going to be able to eat it again. And so I can consciously remind myself, yo, Lily, like, you can eat this anytime you want it. I will make it for you for breakfast if that's what you want. You don't have to freak out about this. I'll even go put some away for you right now as leftovers so you can have it tomorrow. And that helps to get me a little more calmed down and eating mindfully. Another primary driver in me wanting to eat large amounts of food was using food as an emotional coping mechanism, which is a beautiful coping mechanism like we talked about on the video. But certainly I don't want to spend my whole life eating my feelings. And so if I am overeating and I'm struggling to stop myself, or simply thoughts of, I don't really want to be super full tonight, are not enough to stop my food consumption, that's a pretty good indication that there is something else going on. And it can be hard to pick up on these thoughts and feelings and subtle physical sensations that are living in our brains and our bodies. But again, it comes to mindfulness and tuning into ourselves with deep compassion. And that, though it is not a quick fix, is a really important thing that we should be doing super consistently on our journey towards being able to listen to our bodies to fulfill our health and well-being needs. And that will bring us to the several questions that I got about kind of junk food consumption. Cravings for junk food are pretty much self-perpetuating. Our brains get used to certain surges in dopamine, and our gut microbiota contribute to the cravings that we have. So the food that we eat is the food that we're going to eventually crave. Junk food, and certainly vegan junk food, is no exception. They are designed to be hyper palatable. They are designed to be very easy to eat and very easy to overeat. And this exists not for your well-being, but for the financial well-being of the company that produces the food. I am also very aware that junk food in general does not contain a lot of nutrition. And so I know that if my body is craving junk food, it is not a craving that exists from a nutrient need, presuming, of course, that I'm eating sufficient calories, sufficient essential fatty acids, and sufficient nutrients. My body is not going to be asking for junk food because it is missing a nutrient found in that junk food. Junk food is purely for the pleasurable tactile and taste sensations that they provide. That's what it's for. Has nothing to do with nutrition. In addition to keeping that in mind, I also remind myself, Lily, you can have vegan junk food anytime you want it. You can go out and buy a pint of Ben & Jerry's vegan ice cream right now if you want to. Do you want to? And so I can really check in with myself and say, Lily, is this something that you really want? And I know that it tastes good. I know that I really enjoy the sweetness and the creamy fattiness and just like the tactile sensations. I love it. It's good. But I also know that after I eat it, my blood sugar might get a little funny, and I'm probably going to have a little bit of indigestion because I'm not used to it. And the next day, I'm probably going to feel a little bit sluggish, and it might trigger a little bit of acne for me. And so when I think about it that way, most of the time, no, I don't actually want it. I would rather make myself some ice cream out of frozen bananas and frozen fruit or something like that. Of course, there are other junk foods that I'm a little more partial to, like rice noodles. They are like, if I could just fill up a bathtub with rice noodles and put sweet chili sauce all over it and then just slowly eat myself out of the bathtub, like, that would be my favorite way to die. But again, I know that I don't want those rice noodles because they have a special nutrient in them that I can only get from rice noodles. I want them because they taste really yummy, especially when they're covered in sweet chili sauce, and I just love the tactile sensation of noodles. And I know that I can enjoy that sensation whenever I really truly want it, which is like once a week, about, at least. And the last question that we'll go over has to do with confused hunger signals. So I'm sure that everyone watching has probably heard before that it's really common to be thirsty, to need to take in water, and to instead feel that thirst as hunger. That's totally true, and part of the reason why it's intelligent to keep yourself relatively well hydrated throughout the day. Speaking of which, I have found personally that one of my biggest confused signals is when I'm tired and I just want to sit down on the couch for, 10 or 20 minutes or years and just rest. But I won't let myself do that because I think it's lazy and I have so much to get done all the time. When I'm tired like that and I won't let myself rest, I start going to the kitchen and opening up the fridge 82 times an hour to see what's inside. However, I have found that if I do allow myself to sit down and rest and be present with myself and my body and my thoughts and my feelings and my needs for just a few minutes, that I can usually figure out where the signals are getting crossed, give myself a little bit of that rejuvenation that I crave, and then I don't need to deal with my tiredness by eating. I noticed years ago when I was dealing with hypoglycemia that any subtle shift in my blood sugar that feels like it could be headed down sends me straight to the kitchen to eat. I think there was probably, it must have been years, like 4 or 5 years of my life that I didn't know what was going on. I didn't realize that I had blood sugar issues. I didn't know I had hypoglycemia, where I was never hungry. I remember when I started switching up my diet and taking out some of the dietary fat so that my insulin could work more effectively. Once my blood sugar became more stable, I remember for the first time in years, I went 5 hours without eating, and I actually felt the stomach gurgles of hunger for the first time in years. So subtle changes in blood sugar levels can be a real driver of food consumption without us actually being hungry. I've noticed a similar thing happens if I start to get really stressed out. Like if I go into an awesome stress spiral and my cortisol and my adrenaline starts going and I start getting like sweaty and uncomfortable and my blood sugar starts getting wonky, I immediately want to eat. Probably to balance my blood sugar and probably to try to suppress some of those emotions and anxiety that I'm experiencing. I've also noticed that I get a lot hungrier after I exercise. So if I go to the gym and I lift weights in any serious capacity, I'm gonna be hungrier that night and I'm gonna be hungrier the next day. And it's so easy for those gosh darn thoughts to sneak in. That's like, oh, but Lily, you exercised a lot today, and gosh, if you didn't have a big dinner, you could wake up and be skinnier in the morning. Lily, don't you want to not eat? And I just have to like slap that version of myself and say, no, I'm eating. And so absolutely, we can develop so many physical and emotional cues that lead us to go eat food, go eat food. And those can certainly confuse our natural, normal, true hunger. And so again, we come back to inviting in hunger, inviting in the feelings, inviting in moments of pause where we can explore our internal landscapes, get to know ourselves, get to know our bodies, and learn those nuances of emotion and hunger that drive our behavior. So as with most struggles in life, I feel like we always circle back to the same thing, which is kindness with ourselves, mindfulness, and whole plant foods. All right, I hope this discussion has helped to answer some of your questions. If it has spawned more, you can feel free to leave those down below. I will do my best to get to them as I'm able. And thank you for watching this little extra video. As always, make better choices for yourself. No one will do it for you, and take really, really good care. I will see you guys very soon. Bye.